MC for today, and I'm also the Vice President of the Asian American Parents Association. Our co-president is going to speak now for a little bit and tell you a few things about the Asian American Parents Association.
Okay, my name is Shelley. On behalf of AAPA, I would like to take a few minutes to introduce AAPA as an organization. So AAPA actually was founded in the early of the 80s, so by a group of parents, volunteer. So at the time they founded this organization, here's their initiatives. The main goal is really want to promote positive learning environment for the community, students, and the parents. And also, this organization would like to be a bridge between parents, students, and the school district. So over the years, they have done lots of projects. And recently, I would say probably last 10 years, we've been focused on one is called the annual luncheon program, which is we fundraising and sponsor our high school teacher with called the mini grants, which is we reward them around $300 for teacher their classroom project. We think in this way we help the teacher to benefit to our student. Another event is like today, annual seminar. We usually focus on the topic that's interesting to students and parents. We call the Road to College series. Over the years, we have done a lot of seminar, which was very welcome by parents, right? So then we like continue to provide this kind of service to the community, and also we like to continue support by either you can donate money, since we are 503c nonprofit organization. With your donation, we can reward more teachers mini grants, which can benefit our students. Also, if you have any suggestion for any topic that you would like to hear in the future, also please let us know, and we can find appropriate speaker, and we can present to the community. So once again, thank you for all to come to our seminar. And then the last, I would like to introduce all our board members. Without their hard work, we could not have this seminar happen. So let's show all the board members here. They're just a part of that. Some board members may not come in today because they have other things. So and then sorry again for a little bit late start. I think our speaker will be here very soon, and then let's get started, okay? Thank you all.
Our main speaker, Dr. M, to arrive. Her understudy, Carl, is going to talk a little bit about the program, what they do. And so, Carl.
Yeah. Hi, guys. So, my name is Carl. I work with Dr. Red at Blue Stars Admissions Consulting. First, I just want to thank you all for coming tonight. Seems like a really good turnout. I'm really happy you guys are here. Dr. Red is very excited to be presenting. She's just running a few minutes late. I know that Dr. M is going to talk a little about what we do at Blue Stars, and here she is, actually. So let's welcome Dr. M.
Yes.
and we have
I have an activity for you. So hopefully this was worth the wait. There was an accident on 280.
And while Dr. Morgenstern is getting ready and setting up her computer, and Carl is helping and getting the mic set up, and we'll give her a few minutes to do that, I'd like to introduce her. So Dr. M is an award-winning writer, a former university professor, and honors program administrator. She holds both a PhD in philosophy and an MFA in contemporary art. In 2010, she founded Blue Stars Admission Consulting. With her knowledge of the admissions landscape and her engaging teaching style, which we're looking forward to seeing, she has built a strong reputation for helping students to get into their dream schools. So in just a few minutes, Amy will start her talk.
Want me to read it? Would it be helpful if I read it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So first of all, I want to say, again, apologies for being late, and I did not expect a traffic accident. I'm really excited to be here, and I've prepared a whole bunch of material for you, so I hope you've had some tea or coffee after dinner and you're ready to capture a lot of information and hopefully a lot of insight as well. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm really, really happy to be here and see all of you, and hopefully we can also chat afterwards. Carl is also handing out a sign-up sheet. I have done a lot of research for the talk today, and I'm happy to share my resources with you if you're interested in reading up further on things. So if you sign up if you put your name and email on that sheet, I can return with an email with my resources if you want to have further conversations. So I thought it'd be fun first to do something interactive. All teachers love to do interactive things, and above all, I love being a teacher. Here are 3 quotes. 2 are fake, and 1 is real. And this is a description of the ways in which Stanford admissions committees make their decisions when selecting candidates. So I will read the first because I guess there is a lot of text here. So, quote number 1, is this true or is this false? Every year, Stanford has its choice of the best students across the United States, around the world actually, said Samuel Shaw. It should be Richard Shaw, I don't know why Samuel's up there. Director of admissions for Stanford University. We look for the students with the highest scores, the best class rankings and highest GPAs, the most AP classes, and the best scores on their AP tests. Students who are committed to achieving leadership positions in all of their extracurricular activities. Obviously, we receive many more applications than we can admit. Our acceptance rate is decreasing every year. So every year the students are simply more and more qualified, and therefore each subsequent class must achieve more and more to be given serious consideration. Oh, good. Okay. All right, we'll talk about why you think so in a second. Let me move on. Number 2, there is no formula, Shaw says. Even perfect test scores don't guarantee admission. Far from it. 69% of our applicants over the past 5 years with SATs of 2,400 didn't get in. But applicants are also competing against circumstances. Whether or not one young person gets in is not necessarily determined by what they've done and what their characteristics are and their abilities are, and so on, says Provost John Etchemendy. It also depends on the overall mix of people who have applied that year and bubbled to the top. One year being a tuba player might be really important. Another year, well, there are already these 5 even better tuba players, and we don't need another. I'm not saying, yeah, maybe true, maybe false. I want to go to the next one, because this next one, well, I'll tell you why I want to go to the next one. According to Sam Mitchell, Director of Admissions at Stanford University, what really catches the eye of the admissions committee at Stanford is commitment to the community. Stanford looks for leaders who show that they want to change the world somehow, improve the lives of others, contribute to a change that will address a major worldwide issue. Students who have founded their own nonprofits are given special consideration, and the Stanford Admissions Committee in particular looks for essays that highlight a student's community service and volunteer work, especially with populations of the less fortunate. Stanford has always emphasized political engagement and community activity in its curriculum and in the school environment. Of course, short Adams and chuckle. It doesn't hurt. They also want to start a multi-billion-dollar startup. We're always open to the next founders of the next Google here at Stanford. Okay. Who votes for number 1? No one. That's old news. That's like the 2000s. That's like the 20th century and the 2000s. We're done with that well-rounded thing. Okay, so you guys are on to that part. Okay, good. Who votes for number 2? Who votes for number 3? So more number 2 than number 3. More number 2 than number 3. Okay. Why would you think it's number 2? And maybe a feeling, a reason why it might be number 2. Because they're speaking from a position of balance. That is exactly right. They're really speaking from a position of what I like to call sort of like designing, right? They're designing their class. They're really not looking for one particular feature. And the student pool really is subject to circumstance. And so the admissions process at Stanford, as with pretty much every other school, is every year the committee starts anew to form the best class that it can form given the applicant pool that it has. And that's mostly how it works. Right? So there is no formula. We're just really getting it from the horse's mouth. The article where I got this quote, I can link you to. It's a really interesting discussion, and it talks about how committees are formed and things like that at Stanford, how applications are reviewed and by whom, and how these committees work. So if you want some extra insight into that, I'd be happy to share that with you. Okay, so we'll remember, we should just remember number 2 as we go through what I want to talk about tonight. And to think about, all right, well, there are these new initiatives that have popped up in admissions. How much will they affect admissions as we know it? How much will it affect what's going on at the schools, and how much will it affect how you help your children really make the best out of their high school years so that they can get into their dream schools as well? Okay. Well, Jeff already introduced me, so, this is me. I don't really want to spend too much more time on that. I do want to point out that I do have a bunch of blog posts on my website that you might find helpful. I just want to run over there super quick. There's a blog post here. Let's see here. There's one on early admissions. This is slightly different. Worth the Rush, the Race to Early Acceptance at Elite Schools. I wrote that last year, but it's a very well-researched sort of interrogation of what goes on with early admissions. So you might find that really helpful. I've got a lot of other things on like exotic hobbies. Will that help your application? So there's a lot of information that I have to share with you on my website as well. So I'm a reader reader, writer person. Like, this is one of the very few pictures you're going to see tonight, so I just want to warn you and tell you about that. But I know that we're a really visual culture, and it's something I certainly talk to my students a lot about. I happen to just be a creature of habit and deal with language and words a lot. But so I was trying to figure out, like, an image that I can give you that represents what I think is going on with admissions, and not what I think, what really is going on. Because the more you read the story, it just keeps confirming itself. And so shifting sands, that is how I feel like we can talk about it. Shifting sands, that there are, these different sort of planes, and they're moving and they're shifting. Some are overlapping, some are diverging. So, you have a basic landscape that is sort of pretty much intact, but it is moving and shifting in a variety of different ways. So I thought at least, I want you to have that image of what I think is going on in admissions, because there are lots of changes are bubbling up. There is a sort of moment, an alignment of issues and concerns and a variety of forms of actions in response. And I'm going to talk to you about that today. Okay, so we've got these two major initiatives that came out in the past year. And the question is, what are they? What are they meant to do? How will they affect me and my child? Right? And how will they affect admissions in general? And I'm here to tell you that there's no clear answer, but there are lots of different indications for different kinds of things that I'm going to point out. So today I'm going to talk about the Coalition for Access, Affordability and Success. And just first of all, you should know that that is an application. And it's an application that has started working this season. I'll tell you more about that. It's more than an application, but it is that. And then we have this thing called Turning the Tide. Turning the Tide is a report. It's a set of recommendations. It's nothing formal, but it is having a pretty serious influence on admissions culture. So much so that Yale, for example, changed its supplemental questions this year in response to the report. Okay. So again, Turning the Tide is not like an institutional change the way the coalition is, but it is having an effect on admissions. What do I want to say next? I need to grab a drink. I didn't have a drink in the car. Think about this question for 1 second. Thank you. Okay. So, will these initiatives ultimately change the process as we know it? A little, and on some level, profoundly. So to get at this question, what I really wanted to do, and I hope you indulge me, and I know it's a little late, but if you indulge me, I started out as a humanities professor, so I'd like to talk about history and culture a little bit. And I think if we want to really understand, really want to get a sense of the picture, and if you want to leave tonight with a picture where you can really start to keep processing how these changes are going to flow, I think it's really important to actually take a step back and look at the history of admissions. Because there's really like a history of shifting sands. And I think it will set up your thinking in a much more organized way. I see admissions, or generally one can see admissions as this negotiating ground, this interplay between individual achievement, the democratic quest for equal access, and the cultural dynamics of privilege. So whenever we're thinking of admissions, we're sort of thinking about those currents, those streams, those elements. So here's my brief history. At first, there were no applications. So in the 19th century, if you were a privileged young man going to a boarding school, pretty much you were groomed to go to the best colleges in the country. But in the early 20th century, and in the late 19th century, there really was a democratization of colleges. Colleges were opening themselves up to students other than boarding school students. They were opening themselves up to public schools. So we had that spirit of openness going on, but we also had this stream, this current of exclusivity tied to cultural identity. And so what was going on here at this time, pretty much around the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century, you've got this openness, private schools are opening themselves up to public school students. 1926, the birth of the SAT. We all know what that is, right? And the SAT was launched actually to filter out those privileged guys who were just sort of getting in because, nepotism, word of mouth, that sort of thing. They wanted to open up college admissions to students all over the country. What happened was campuses became more diverse. And more specifically, the Jewish students who went to the public schools started to excel at the SAT and populate elite college campuses more voluminously, and that became a cause of concern. And so, as a result, guess what was born? The modern college application, a holistic, character-based application. In other words, the college application, as we know it today, was actually born out of the impulse to exclude Jewish students from the university and keep the majority population as white Protestant. So I just think this is very interesting. And that's why Harvard asked for a picture. That's the origin of the picture from Harvard. Harvard Yale instantly followed adding an essay, and that's when the personal essay was born. So the personal essay was born actually not to include, but to exclude. They were trying to look at the lifestyles of these applicants to make sure that they fit into the communities, the cultures that they had built. So I just feel like it's just an interesting little factoid or tidbit, this personal essay, the thing that I value as the place where every student can be that shining star, show his or her uniqueness. I worship that work with my students. It's so important. And yet you can see that in a different cultural context, it was used in a very, very different way. I made that point. So what you can see is that admissions practices are the result of the interface between evaluation tools, methods, and culture. And what we really, in order to understand how these tools work, we have to understand how they're interfacing with culture. The personal statement used to be used very emphatically to exclude. Now it's used to include. The SAT was used to include. Now, I'm not going to say we don't use it to exclude, but it is seen as exclusive. It is seen as a barrier these days, at least in admissions culture. Okay, that was it. That was pretty brief, I think. I skipped the 80s, and there's a lot to say about the 80s, but it's not completely in line, and I have too many other things to say, but a lot happened then, too. That was the birth. In 1983, U.S. News and World Report, the rankings were born. So I don't want to date myself, but, around when I went to college, there were no rankings. Where are we here? Let's talk about the culture and the admissions culture. At universities, at national and regional meetings of admissions officials, of college counselors. This is what everybody's talking about pretty much all the time. Access and diversity. If any of you guys, if anybody, I don't know if there are high school students here, but if you've maybe heard your students talk about the ethos of something, really if you want to think about the ethos of admissions culture, very strong concerns about access and diversity. The opposite of the early 20th century, where it was really concerned about exclusivity and preserving a kind of culture. Nowadays, every time you talk to an admissions person, diversity is one of the first things that's on that person's mind. Making access to universities equitable. Huge, huge, huge discussions about this. Also now, what is becoming a very prominent discussion in the admissions community as well is the effect of the admissions process on teen character and psychology. So you'll see that there are a number of measures in the coalition and also in Turning the Tide that are addressing this. We're trying to. So I already mentioned this. What I want to say about the coalition, it's not just an application, it's also this portfolio building and communications platform for younger high school students. And I will get into a little bit more detail about that. Turning the Tide, as I said, again, it's a report. It stemmed from the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Making Caring Common project. That project is really about making caring common, and they located this sort of set of practices in society known as admissions as a place where caring is not made common. And so that's why they decided to address admissions. The person who authored this report, he actually is new to admissions himself. I was just listening to an interview with him, and he's really only understood admissions like in the past year. So, but he has a lot to say about admissions. So that's one thing to think about is, how deep this understanding is and whether these recommendations are things that can be accommodated by this kind of competitive process. But these are for us to think about and talk about, and also to see how things unfold. This is all really brand new. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about coalition. Then I'm going to talk about Turning the Tide. Then I'm going to share some research and findings and analysis as to how this all shakes down for you guys as parents of high school students, and maybe there are some high school students here too, not sure. Here is the coalition, right here. You can get a really nice, very pretty succinct discussion of their mission and their values. If you go here to students and you move into here how it works, you can see videos where you can get an overview of what's going on in the coalition. It's a really well done website. Okay, and so what the coalition does, first of all, there are 80 members, or there might be 81 or 82, things just keep shifting and changing. The members include every Ivy League school, Stanford, University of Chicago, liberal arts colleges, Amherst, Swarthmore, Williams, leading public institutions, University of Michigan, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Virginia. 52 schools. Yesterday was 53. So things keep shifting. I had 53 until I looked at it again today. Here, you can see these are the schools. Let me see if I can just make this a little smaller for you guys. You can see all of the schools. You can see Harvard, Indiana, Vanderbilt, UNC, Williams, Yale, Caltech. Quite a number at this point. So schools are participating, they are joining, they are very much, many of them, in line with the spirit of the coalition. The University of Florida, Washington, and Maryland will most probably, I mean, we still have a little time, but they'll most probably be exclusively using the coalition application in the future. I have a lot of students who apply to the University of Washington, so that's something to consider, just to think about. Although I don't think it'll make a huge difference. However, there are different essay exams. You have to be eligible to be a participating school in the coalition system. You have to be a public institution that has affordable tuition and need-based financial aid for in-state students. For private colleges, you have to provide sufficient financial need to meet the full demonstrated need of every student. There's a practice that some schools use called gapping, where they give lower income students some aid, but they don't fill in the gap, and then the students can't go to the school, and then financial aid goes to the less low income students. Anyway, they're trying to say that if you do that, you can't join the coalition, right? You have to be able to meet everything. If you accept somebody, you have to meet that person's need to belong to the coalition. And you also, you must have a 6-year federal graduation rate of 70%. So not all state institutions will be able to meet that criteria. So not all universities will be participating. And in fact, I think within a few years, like within 2 to 3 years, I think they're hoping that a total of 300 schools will join. So, and the Common App has, I guess, around 500 at this point. Most schools, except for the 3 that I mentioned, will be using the Coalition app and the Common app as well. They might have their own in-house app too. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the platform, it has this application, okay? And I guess you're going to be wondering, if my child is applying to a school that accepts both applications, should my child use the Coalition or the Common app? And I'm going to say, we can talk about that in Q&A, but I know that also in Q&A, my answer is probably going to be, it depends, which is an answer I give a lot because everything, when you're a strategist, everything depends on very particular factors. So, I would say I need to know your student, I need to know what your child is going to show for herself, and I need to figure out which is the best portal, which is going to be the best platform. There are also questions, I'm going to talk about this. The Coalition was born out of concerns for educational access for low-income students, and so it seems that you can only apply through the Coalition, or you can only use the Coalition website if you're a low-income student, and that is also not the case. So let me just say, the Coalition has these 3 parts. It has that application, which I already talked about, and then it's also trying to connect with students pre-admissions. It's trying to become a vehicle to get younger students to think about their profiles earlier, to think more intentionally about the things that they are doing. It gives them a place to store their work. And then the other feature, the 3rd bullet point, it allows them to share their work with someone else. Okay. So we can talk more about this too, because I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I do think the online locker is a very good idea in principle. It's something I've adapted in some of the work that I've done. We created a college planning workshop where we use this organizational principle of having students store things and giving them sort of a way to organize themselves. So I think it's a great idea. Who's going to use it? And we can talk, how are they going to use it? If this is slotted for a low-income student, who's going to guide a low-income student in using it. So there are lots of questions about how this is really going to shake down. But I just want to explain to you what it is. And what it is it's a place where students can store essays that they've written, they've got really good grades on, they can store personal writing, they can store artwork that they've done, they can store their resume and keep updating their resume. And then if there's a mentor they'd like to share it with through the system, they can plug the email of the mentor into the share. This is also meant ultimately for a recruitment tool for colleges to be scouting out lower income students and using the Coalition as a communications platform. So that is pretty much the Coalition. It's this application and it's this locker. So, and it's a way to share your work. And so then the question is, do I need this? Will I be interfacing with this if I'm dealing with a student who is not a low-income student? We can talk about that later. And so it was one of these goals. It wanted to provide a way for colleges to interact with students earlier through that sharing of the locker feature. It wanted to forge a less formulaic approach to applications, which they feel has been the norm. So within the Coalition application, the member schools have more freedom to tailor the application. It's not like in the Common App where everyone has that common application and you can add some questions later. And ultimately, this is what they're saying about themselves. They're trying to use the Coalition as a way to change, the way students, colleges, and society. So it's a very lofty, ambitious goal. How we all think about the admissions process. Turning the Tide is trying to do the same thing. Here is a quote from the Vice Provost for Enrollment and Management at Purdue University. This is a very active member of the coalition, Helen T. Warren, and she says that the idea isn't about how you should pad your resume, but about how you should have significant experiences as part of your education. So on some level, I haven't said this to myself yet in thinking about this presentation, but this is exactly what's happening. The coalition is sort of formulating its sort of ethos and turning the tide. They're trying on some level a form of social engineering through policy recommendations. It's really what they're trying to get everyone to sort of rethink how admissions affects us and what it gets us to do. So is this going to be a challenge to the common application? And my answer, as usual, will be either it depends or yes and no. On some level, no. Because most schools, the vast majority of schools, will be accepting both applications. And a number of schools definitely think that the majority of applications will be common application. Definitely over the next several years. Here is a quote from Seth Allen, Vice President and Dean of Admissions at Pomona College, who is also very active in the coalition. He thinks that in a few years' time, maybe 15% of their applications will be coalition applications. But, well, these schools never use the common application, so it's not really a threat to the common application, but they're not going for the common application, they're going for the coalition. Still, there are challenges, and some of us remember the tech glitch of 2013 when early admission had to be delayed and things like that. That was really insane. And you know, some admissions offices are just like burned from that. Like they're never going to just go back to just the Common App ever again. It was a nightmare. So one of the things is that schools are trying to diversify the applications, which is another weird thing. I haven't seen any discussion about this because the coalition application is very different from the common application. And now the question is, how are the schools going to evaluate these students who are displaying their work themselves through these different platforms? So there's nothing about that yet because nothing's happened yet. So I'm sure after this first round, we'll be a discussion about that. Yes, so many people find the Common App too homogenizing and limiting. So there are it's being chipped away. It's being chipped away. That's all I'm going to say. Again, I don't think anything drastic over the next 3 years or 4 years is going to happen, but 5 years from now, it might be a different landscape. But nonetheless, several members of the Common Application are also members of the Coalition. It's also a big mishmash as well. What I want to say to you is if you compare the early 20th century and what was happening with admissions and early 21st century, there's also a very, very different historical context operating. Early 20th century, admissions was forming itself. It was a process, sort of underway. It was institutionalizing itself. It became an institution over the course of the 20th century. Now, we're in the age of, here in Silicon Valley buzzword, disruption, right? We're in the age where we challenge institutions. I shouldn't mention the presidential election. I won't. But institutions are being challenged there, crazy or sane or whatever it is, right? All of these structures are being called into question. And this is also, the admissions culture hasn't escaped this larger pattern in culture of sort of questioning everything, questioning things that have been. How can we make this better? How can we do better? So that's another of the challenges in life, that the upshot of the essay isn't, I'm so proud, I did a great job, this thing is really hard, and finally, I got this break, and I was able to do this, or I found this thing inside myself, and I was able to achieve that thing. You can't stop there in the essay anymore. Now you have to say what that thing contributed. You have to sort of make that kind of connection. So it's this making caring common, the turning the tide, has already had a really profound effect on the kind of advice students are getting. I had a parent call me last week saying, oh, we're working on this essay. And she said, oh, he's really upset because he got this message from his English teacher that he has to talk about the community in his essay. And he's talking about his internship in his essay. And I said, well, his internship has to do with air purification. In my mind, that has everything to do with the community. So, there's now, people are really, this Turning the Tide was able to send a very strong message out to our society. It's very interesting the way it's sort of bubbling around. Anyway, what they're saying is, don't rack up a ton of extracurriculars. Choose well and choose authentically. Ultimately, it's going to be your authentic self that's going to get you into college, is their message. They also say, do it in a sustained fashion. Instead of this little thing, that little thing. Use your volunteering to show your commitment, to show your dedication. They want to promote the idea that you can do lots of good things in groups with other people. In fact, they're really starting to favor that kind of teamwork in response to community challenges. They want students to have experience with diversity. And they want students to have an attitude of gratitude and a sense of responsibility for the future. And I just sort of lifted a lot of keywords, and I can link you to the executive summary. But the idea is they want students to really have an appreciation of what came before them and what they can do to forge on with this initiative. So when you guys rejected that number 1 from the Stanford admissions office, right? You were right. That idea of sort of good grades, your SAT scores, your gazillion extracurriculars, your leadership, and you, and me. It's just out of favor at this point. It's not to say you shouldn't achieve, right? It's the angle, it's the spin, it's the story you're telling about yourself as a future community member. So they also have these recommendations on how you assess ethical engagement, and I think we can even talk about this idea of how it might be really weird to assess ethical engagement, but that's a whole other story. But they also want to communicate to families, to teams, that working, caring for a sibling at home, getting a job to help out with household income, all the little things that we don't generally think count as extracurriculars, they need to count as extracurriculars. And students who have had, in these situations, they haven't had time to do these sorts of things, they are meaningful. And I have to say, a lot of my students, the mission trip, I'm going to Africa, I'm going to Mexico, and these are very prominent things, and I always say, well, what about East Palo Alto, or San Jose, and things like that. Local, small, it doesn't have to be big. Small things can be super monumental if they talk about your character. And these are the kinds of things that your admissions leaders are looking for. They've always been looking for that. They now have an extra strong mandate. In fact, I was listening to another interview with MIT admissions director, and he said, talking about all of these recommendations, he said, this is what MIT has been doing all along. These are the things we've been looking for anyway. These are the kinds of questions we ask. MIT has like a question about your sense of humor, a question about your world. So on some level, this is nothing new, but it's that the angle is being emphasized in a certain way. That second recommendation, too, which might mean that letters of recommendation from teachers might weigh more in the future, is what they really want to encourage admissions offices to do is to look at the day-to-day behavior of a student. Not, one's character is not necessarily defined by one event, even if it was a big event, even if it was a life-changing event. They think that admissions offices should try and get a picture of what a student is like. So again, I don't know if you guys are familiar with common data sets. That's where universities will talk about how they work admissions and what factors into. And they will rate, different schools will rank different things differently. So some might consider the essay more important than other schools. Some might consider extracurriculars more important. So my guess is it's possible that schools will start to look at letters of recommendation a bit more carefully, because those are the people who can talk about the day-to-day, give that clue. So new emphases, new lenses, new angles. And they're really concerned, really concerned with the way that admissions and the race for affecting students' mentality. And so this has been a big theme, again, part of the ethos of the admissions community. And so they got these other recommendations of prioritizing the quality of your extracurriculars as opposed to the quantity. They are strongly recommending that admissions offices limit the space you have to push your extracurriculars in to like 2 to 4. Right? They're trying to make that statement that know yourself, know what you love, try some things. Don't drive yourself crazy trying everything. That's the message they're trying to get across. Similarly with your AP and IB classes, take the ones in the subject you love and go for it. But racking them up, they're trying to get admissions offices to change their view on that. Whether that's going to happen, I could tell you a story about letters of recommendations that's somewhat maddening as well later on. Not letters of recommendations, excuse me, SAT subject tests and the murkiness of admissions officers when you ask them, are you going to look at this SAT subject test even though you don't require the test? They say, well, if this is going to help a student, then the student should submit it. Okay, how is that going to work with other students who don't submit that SAT? Well, students are encouraged to submit everything that will help them. So even though this particular school had literally emphatically stated to me in an email, we do not require SAT subject tests. And I wrote back and said, okay, do you look at them if they're submitted and do you count that as part of the student's candidacy? Whatever helps the student. So in other words, right? They're looking, right? It's all so murky. And this fourth bullet point, alleviate the pressure around standardized testing, that's one of these sort of sub-points that they have when there's, they said that colleges should be very clear about how they weight SAT exams. Because so many of my students go crazy with the SAT, taking it over and over and over again, right? Because there's just, you don't know, right? And then taking a gazillion subject tests. And in the end, I have to tell you, I told my student to take the subject test. They told me it was going to help him. I think he's going to do well, right? Even though it's not required. So anyway, what they are asking for admissions offices to be more transparent. And then I would think that's so awesome. But I'm not holding my breath because it's in the murkiness where they do things and they get results and there's nothing you can do about it. They want to discourage overcoaching. And they also want to expand students thinking about good college and broaden one so that we're not fixated on, a few schools. They also want to get us off the whole ranking situation. And along those lines, I do have this link here to Frank Bruni. I don't know if you're familiar with Frank Bruni. He's a New York Times columnist, and one of his sort of like pet projects is to like critique the admissions process and what it has been doing. He has different speeches on YouTube that you can watch, and he has a book, he has a number of articles, and he just came out with an article yesterday, so this is from yesterday, just scathingly critiquing U.S. News and World Report, and in the midst of it, giving this glowing, wonderful, super specific review of the University of Maryland and how strong it is in STEM studies and how much it supports underprivileged students, and what a vibrant, multicultural atmosphere it has. And so it's a lovely read, and I would recommend that. And it's along the lines about expanding your thinking about colleges. I haven't given any of my own editorial, positions yet tonight. But one thing I do want to say, just to build on this, is when I work with students and families, I really like to take the long view. I think it's looking beyond the 4 years, looking, okay, where's the master's program you want to get to, or the med school, or do you want to go for a PhD or law school, and then sort of reverse engineer from there. So I think that is a sort of healthier way of going about things, because it's really thinking about the end game. Reactions, results, effects, and almost done. So you can see here an immediate result. Yale always had an open essay. Bob, did you work with an essay? I used to work at Harvard and Yale. We were at the Common App, we had the open essay, we had this really big project, and it changed this year as a result of these initiatives, right? Who or what is a source of inspiration for you? It's not asking for an accomplishment, it's asking about your inclinations. It's asking about your tastes, it's asking about what is your soul? What can your soul convey to me? Right? If you could live for a day as another person, right? Who would it be? That's a personal question. You're teaching a Yale course. What is it called? Again, asking about your interests, your inclinations. I love. I used to be a university professor. I think Jeff mentioned that. So I love that prompt, and it's really, Emory has it. Another school had it last year too. It's super, super fun to work on. And just fun to show students how they can sort of develop creative things out of their own interests. The last one. What would you contribute to the dynamic of your suite, right? Getting back to that recommendation about looking at how students behave in the daily world. Stanford has that roommate question, right? Are you likable? Basically, that question is, you better show that you're likable. That's what that roommate question is all about. So you can see there are already effects here. I mean, the report just came out, 6 months ago or so. There's strong support from institutions like the University of Virginia. You can see this quote. They philosophically agree with everything. So University of Virginia, I'm sure, will be adopting a lot of these recommendations and measures. Making Caring Common plans to talk with other officials and all stakeholders over the next 2 years, so let's see what else happens. So more will unfold. We're going to do just a little bit more analysis here. If we look back at recent history, 2011, USC partnered with the Educational Conservancy. They had a conference for 200 people. They came up with a report trying to change the admissions process. It had to do with overemphasis on testing and things like that, and making it more fair. Did anybody ever hear of it? Really? Nothing happened. So, is this my question? And I don't have the answer, but I am trying to show you that it already has started to make some changes. Is it the dawn of a new ethos? Or is this a lot of hoopla? I don't know. And it could possibly be both. So some people have actually argued that admissions has gotten worse since that report, so there is a question about the general efficacy of these kinds of initiatives. Wesleyan University, Michael Roth is somewhat skeptical, and I really enjoyed him. And in fact, there might be a conversation between Frank Rooney and Michael Roth on YouTube that is quite wonderful about the value of a liberal university. I just think he's really awesome. I'm a big fan. Anyway, he says, I do worry about trying to create a new system that will measure qualities that will supposedly make people better people. How do you assess that? Right? Plus, is it going to be authentically taken up, or will people just game this like they do with other things? So, a little bit of skepticism about that. Inside Higher Ed founder Scott Jaschik writes, that it is really tough to change things. It's tough to reform admissions. It's difficult to pull up. And he said basically that institutions find it difficult to move together, as institutional interests may not always align. And on this, I didn't put a link to this, but I can put in a link to a handout for you guys. Along these lines of institutional interests may not always align, Malcolm Gladwell, who is so awesome as well, and students, you should listen to Malcolm Gladwell, and parents, it's just a wonderful treat. He has in his podcast, Revisionist History, he has 3 episodes on college and college admissions. And this one episode has to do with the difference between Vassar and Bowdoin, 2 very high-ranking liberal arts colleges. One has really, really bad food and a highly, highly diverse student body and not as much of an endowment. And the other one has really, really, really good food and not a whole lot of diversity and a huge endowment. And so very, very different experiences, different kinds of education, different kinds of communities, responding in different ways. And so here's a really good example of where the interests are not necessarily aligned. And so is case in point that this kind of reform might only go so far. I think this is my last slide. But what can we get still, nonetheless, get out of this? I think that what we can get out of this is that the higher ed and the admissions community is they are signaling strongly the changes that they want, changes that what they value, right? And it's already coming down to us. It's coming down to my student through this high school teacher. It's coming to Yale, right? Changes in the application. It's already translating into how students are thinking about English into the world. That's a great attitude to have. So I guess to teach that is a really good message. So how can we heed this message, and how do we heed this message? And this is something that Blue Stars we've been, so over years I sort of encapsulated what I think, the admissions ethos, or the values of the times are signaling to us. And here's sort of like a cheat sheet sort of thing. Like if you're working with your child and thinking about activities, or if you are a student here and you're thinking about these activities, here's the sort of constellation of stuff that admissions offices want to see. They want to see sort of these 5 things. We call them the 5 core attributes, or the 5 C's. They're really good pillar characteristics to sort of have around, right? So if you want to be successful in admissions, and of course if you want to be successful in life, what you need to challenge yourself. You need to get out in the world where the struggle. The world doesn't give you what you want all the time. And admissions offices want to see what students do with that. When things don't go their way, or things are harder than it seems, when things are confusing, how does a person get their footing? These are important signals to an admissions office. They'd also like to see that you look at the world in fresh ways, that you can introduce something new, whether through creativity or it's through some sense of initiative. It doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. It could be something in your household. It could be something in the classroom. It could be something in a relationship. So it does not have to be grandiose, but these are the kinds of things they're looking for. Being a curious person, wanting to know how things work, wanting to know why they don't work, right? A seeking, curious soul. Of course, that generous, ethical character, we know that's a big factor. We've been talking about that all night. And then that commitment, demonstrated dedication to what we find important. So I know a lot of my students will join Interact and things like that and go and do a lot of separate volunteering things. And often we say, well, what about what about some neighborhood thing right near you? And you can just go on your bike once a week sort of thing, and establish relationships with people, that sort of thing. So these are the kinds of ways you can use this as a basis for making decisions. Okay, now we're done with my pictures. So remember the shifting sands? And I felt like I really want to leave you with some images. Like, how do we deal with all this when things are changing, but there's nothing really definite going on? And so I feel like the image of the tree is always a really, really great image, because it's just think about that solid trunk and think about building that, for your child and helping your child build this really solid foundation, these roots, and then branching out into the world, and maybe branches are touching with other branches of other trees, and that sort of image, but really sort of, focusing on, the strength as a person, and giving your child a sense of interest in the world, exploration, that kind of thing. Just branching out, not worrying too much about the other trees. And the other, I like to, the gem. I like that image a lot as well. And I often use the gem as a way to talk about your application as well. And if you think about just each of these facets, maybe academic, maybe particular extracurricular, maybe who you are as a person, sort of developing your child like a gem. So there's all these facets, but it's all connected to one core. And then there's my favorite image, the blue stars. And that's why I named Blue Stars. after an entity that can keep expanding, and it can be next to another thing that's expanding, there's plenty of room in the galaxy for blue stars, and they're hot, and they're bright, and they're big, and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's the image I like to think about in terms of how do you approach college plan images. So I'm done, and I'm happy to take questions. And I just wanted you to know that there is, if you'd like to get in touch, here's the information coming out about. So.
Thank you, Dr. M. So just to give you a little background, as we explained, Dr. M was stuck in traffic and Carl's on the phone saying, hurry up, there's 150 people waiting. And so to come into a presentation with that kind of pressure and to give such a great presentation is pretty remarkable. So thanks, and let's give it a
I just want to say that I would love to talk. It just takes over everything, so thank you.
So is it okay if we go over a little bit with Q&A? Because we got a late start. So if anyone needs to leave now, because we did say 8:30, that's fine. But we will take questions for a while. We have some cards here, so you can either raise your hand with a question, or we'll pass out little 3x5 cards. You can write down your questions and then answer them. I wonder, Dr. M, if we could use the Corbett mic to walk around and you can answer here.
That would be awesome.
So okay, any questions?
So my question is about the coalition application. Two parts. First is whose decision which application to use, the coalition application or the common application. The second question is I don't understand how that's supposed to help low-income students.
Okay, so to answer your first question, it's the student, if the university uses both applications, it's the student's decision. Totally up to you. And as a strategist, I'd want to talk with the student. I'd be looking at each application of like, okay, which one can you milk more? That's what it would come down to. Which one can you just fill up and max and it's like play into your strengths? Can you elaborate on your second question? I'm just wondering what's in your mind because I have a similar question myself.
Yeah, I read this before your talk today. The notion that this was set up so that help low-income students.
Yes.
Because it allows the colleges to see their growth.
Yes.
Maybe the absolute performance is not as good as, more socioeconomic advantage students. But if everybody's doing that, how is it going to help the low-income students? I just don't understand how, with the initial purpose of it, but now if it's spreading like that, so every student's choice, in a way, it's move everybody to establish the achievements much, much earlier on, perhaps.
So it's not yet clear how universities are connecting with low-income students. I know that they already look through the College Board and will look at SAT scores and start scouting out there. I don't know if they're going to scout through the coalition. I just don't have enough information to share with you at this moment. Or if they're going to scout outside the coalition and then invite particular students to the coalition to share their work with them. I don't have an answer to that. My feeling about the coalition is they've created this locker thing, but if a student isn't being guided in how to use it, what good is it, right? In fact, I might be encouraging my more affluent students to use it as it's a great thing for me and my student because I've got a platform and I can now coach my student for that. So it's been very vague. So I can't, again, is this more who is it a good intention that really hasn't integrated itself quite into the systems? And, we can look at, the statistics for our, top schools, and even with these mandates, they haven't budged too much in the amount of underprivileged students that they let into their schools. So, how this will really, they seem to, all of the Ivy Leagues are very intent on trying to, what they also say they're doing is they're very intent on finding a larger pool of talented underprivileged students. So whether they'll actually let in more, maybe they're just trying to widen the pool. I think it's still really mysterious, and I share a lot of your questions. So that's as far as I can go right now, not having seen it in use yet.
Okay, I'm going to alternate with a written question now. So here's a written question. My child is a senior and is completing his Common App. Should he also fill out the Coalition app for any competitive advantage?
Well, you can only submit one application. So that's number one. So basically you would have to, again, if I were guiding a student, I would say, let's look at the Coalition app. Let's look at the Common App. Which one are you going to be able to show more of yourself and more of the better parts? So you really just have to, that's really what it comes down to. Pick one and then max it out.
I'm still not clear about so if you want to apply for reading colleges, right? Is it one application you submit and then send different essays, or how is it really? This Common and Coalition, I'm still not getting it, right?
So for each one of these, you can sign up and you can get an account. Okay. Do you have somebody who's applying to college this year?
Not really. I have 5 more years to go. Maybe that's why the question is so
That's okay. That's okay. Really, it really is you either just sign up for one or sign up for the other, and then it guides you through with all of the personal information, the educational information. It shows you the essay questions and gives you a spot to answer them and to pick your colleges as well. So it's a matter you don't have to worry about it at all right now. It's almost a sort of technical question when you get to admissions. But one of the questions for you might be, is the locker for the Coalition going to be something that my student, my child can use or not? And my answer to that would be, if there isn't anything else available, that might be something to help you structure the way your child sort of keeps up all of the material, or you can use it as a model. So don't worry about the actual application yet. that it's really a technical thing in the end.
Okay, next question. UC does not use either the Common App or the Coalition app, and that's the answer to the question. Does so? Question mark. How does the Coalition app affect UC?
Oh, and I wanted, thank you for that question, because I wanted to talk about UC. It doesn't affect it at all. The UC app is the UC app is the UC app. That's it, okay? However, what's interesting is this year they changed their essay questions. The essay questions used to be personal statement questions. And the first question asked about goals and aspirations, right? Right? And then the second question was about a quality or experience or characteristic that makes you proud and what it says about who you are. Back to that, right? Well, this year they changed them. You choose 4 out of 8, and they're actually called personal insight questions. So they literally changed the title from personal statement to personal insight. And that, again, means that it's the way our culture is shifting. They want to know what's on the inside. They don't want you displaying all your feathers and wares and things like that. So, to answer the question, the Coalition doesn't affect the UC application at all. It just remains its own separate application. But it is affected by this new ethos, this new thinking about admissions.
Another question.
So Coalition Act is started this year, is that correct?
Yes.
And any college university in California using this coalition app?
Yes, Stanford. Stanford, Claremont McKenna, right? We saw on that list the 52 schools, so definitely Stanford, Claremont McKenna. I think Santa Clara is using it as well. Yeah. Let me see if I can get this up. Yes. There we go. Claremont McKenna. Pomona is a big participant. I thought it was Stanford on here somewhere. Stanford's not doing it this year. But this is the list of the schools that are doing it this year.
Hi, Doctor. Thank you very much for the good talk with you today. It's really insightful. I have a question about secondary language. So my daughter, obviously, we're Chinese, so she has been studying Chinese since she was young, and she's pretty good at it. So right now, when she goes to high school, I should have asked the question earlier, but do you feel like she needs to take a second language, like Spanish of sort? Would that be helpful? Personally, I don't think that would be very useful for her, but I don't want me to make a bad choice so that she's at a disadvantage. Thank you.
I generally encourage my clients when they're of a certain ethnicity to take a language that is not connected to their ethnicity, because remember, again, the ethos is diversity, right? So it's very often the case, an admissions officer will expect that a Chinese student has taken Chinese, right? But to jump out of that culture and learn the language of another culture would be very valuable in an admissions officer's eyes. So I've been working with a student this year who is Chinese American, and she fell in love with all these different factors. You have this child, you have admissions, and how do you mix these all together? So you definitely want diversity to be in the mix, but it could be something totally different. I'll give you one example. I have a former student who went to Burlingame High. And once a month, she went to San Francisco with her friends and offered brunch to homeless people in Civic Center. And just hung out and talked with them and sort of built this thing up so that, it became a little bit more frequent, more members. That's an exercise in diversity, right? And learning stories and learning the stories of these people and things like that. So there are lots of different ways. So you just want to make sure you've got the diversity piece in there.
Can you explain more the concept of the blocking or the pre-admission? Like how early do you think that you talk about the lock?
The locker.
The lockers
Yeah.
and the pre-admission, and how early and in which way to...
The locker is for high school students, so starting in 9th grade. And most people, colleges, college counselors, we all pretty much say the same thing. It's like up until 9th grade, I meet with families, right? I don't really coach students, and it's really in 9th grade when you start to, gear up for college planning. So.
In which way do they need to... I understood that they collect information and they send it to them, or do they keep them and they build it at home before they even do the pre-admission, because we're supposed to say pre-admission.
I just said that it's like a pre-admission stage that they're trying to cover. Like, again, they don't have any formal program. And there's no formal program for Ivy League officials to meet choice low-income students. There's no official thing. It's just like a platform, and they're launching an idea, and they're giving these students a way to share it with other people. And then maybe there'll be something more formal where the colleges are scouting out low-income students, but it's not happening yet.
So basically, you're saying they would have to go into that website.
Yes.
And
Get a login,
website.
a membership, and then you can have your own space there.
Okay.
I don't know.
So what qualifies as low income? What is a range of income that would be defined as low income?
I didn't do research on that particular I would have to get back to you on that, on what, I'm sure it's a certain, tax bracket or, something on the FAFSA form. Usually it's about like households with income of $60,000 or less, something along those lines.
I worked a lot of talk to discuss how colleges pick students. I'm actually wondering, how about the other side? How should the student pick the right college, good college for the student? How do you give recommendations or how can I guide my daughters to find the right school for her? Definitely not US report ranking.
Definitely not what, I'm sorry?
How the US does that.
Yes. Right. Yes. Okay, so how can you start looking for colleges? I mean, this is something that we do with our college planning students all of the time, and we have, sort of resources and tools that we look at. We don't completely discount U.S. News, only because there's actually a lot of information on the site about the school that is, really helpful. It's hard for me, basically I tend to know the schools and I know a student. So once you want to start to think through, okay, are we going for like more of a STEM type thing? You want to start to generate the area. Is it going to be humanities? Is it going to be social science? Is it going to be business? Is it going to be STEM? And then what I really do find very, very helpful as an initial tool are a bunch of rankings, not just one. So for example, if you're looking for the best undergraduate business school, I think that Bloomberg Business Week has like a fantastic ranking system. It's got amazing descriptions. It's very, very helpful. If you're looking for engineering, and particular kinds of engineering, I go through US News into their departmental rankings. Those are way more accurate because they're evaluated by the graduate schools. It doesn't translate directly into undergraduate instruction, but it gives you the schools that have strengths in those areas. And it's broken down into a variety of, all different kinds of engineering that you can find, all the natural sciences as well. So start to look through lists, and then you can see how the lists overlap. And then the same schools will start cropping up. And then you can go into a number of college selection websites. I like one called Noodle, like eating noodles. Noodle is a good one. College Data is a good one. I love the student reviews. That comes maybe a little later because it's more about like the food and the dorms and the social life sort of thing. But that's a nice sort of complement to it. So start to define the area, start looking through your list, see what's overlapping, and then get into your deeper dive with the schools. We have an entire sort of process that we do for younger students and then older students. But preliminary, that's what in College Data you can do fit too. There's a little function for that where you can see the fit. You can do the net cost as well from there. So it's a really nice tool. Noodle has more language, it has more text, more copy, content. So they're nice to work with together.
I think we have time for just one more question.
Thank you for your presentation. How is common application different from individual college applications?
I'm not sure, how is the common app different from?
I didn't know. I mean, I'm sure many colleges have their own application, right? Or they don't have those applications anymore. You have to use common application.
Very few schools have their own application these days. The state schools. UC, University of Texas, University of Washington, University of Wisconsin, then MIT. Otherwise, most schools are on the common application. There are very few schools that are not using the common application. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, and the school will be very clear if it's not using it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you again for all your answers, and can we give one more final round of applause?